You can tell a lot about a nation, about a society, by how it treats and takes care of its elderly. And by that metric, Ireland is failing miserably. We here in Ireland are supposed to have what can be called or termed a social contract with our government. And that is, we are supposed to pay our taxes all through our lives and remain very law-abiding, play the game, as you might say, and in turn, for us being productive and law-abiding members of society and living well in society, the government in turn is supposed to provide us with certain things to make the environment safe, for example, to have the rule of law and to enforce it, to protect our borders. Well, we won't go into that right now. I do plenty of that as it is. But another part of it is that there's a social contract there with taking care of the ordinary citizen, of the ordinary Irish person, from the cradle to the grave, you might say. That we give a portion of our lifelong salary and the fruits of our labour, as well as many other taxes, and in turn the government provides services for the young, the old, the sick, people who need certain social services. The government is supposed to provide those. That's the social contract in very, very basic terms. But what has happened over the past number of years is this social contract has started to fray, it started to break down, because the government has slowly, and then faster and faster, decided to lob off. They lopped off bits here and there that they didn't particularly like. Things that they were supposed to do and did do in previous times, they've now either stopped doing them or outsourced them completely, just to private entities, private businesses, as in they wanted to wash their hands of things so that it wouldn't be their problem anymore. They might maybe throw money at it, but it wouldn't. If it went all pear-shaped, well, it wouldn't be their problem. That's where the social contract is disintegrating. And it's well known we here in Ireland have an absolutely horrendously over-bloated NGO sector, non-governmental organisation sector. And a large part of that is NGOs who are providing certain services which, in the old days, the government would have done directly. It's now got these NGOs who are being paid by the government. They just throw money at them and they put them in charge of various things like care of the elderly, care of the young, care of these immigrant asylum seeker centres. They're all pretty much privateers now. They're really, in effect, a shadow civil service. They are doing tasked jobs and fulfilling roles that would have been government departments and would have been handled by civil servants and government employees. That's now been offshored. So a lot of these NGOs are essentially a way of keeping the civil service off the books, if you like, which suits the government very well. Now, whilst I have no beef nor issue with the private sector as a whole in general, the problem with that is you have to always remember that the private sector is the private sector. They're businesses. Their whole raison d'etre is to make profit. It's not to care about people, it's to care about their shareholders or their owners, directors. So the problem with the private sector, whenever you put them into social roles, is that you really have to have the rule book very, very clear. And on top of that, you have to absolutely watch them like a hawk. Because, as I said, businesses are in business to make a profit, not to care about you or me. And that's where the whole thing is now coming a cropper. You see, the government is in such a hurry, such a panic to offload certain tasks that it really is its responsibility to do to these private companies, private corporations, NGOs, charities, government-funded charities, if you like, that it really just wants to get rid of the problem and then go off about its business and pretend everything's fine. And so they don't want to know if the whole thing's going wrong. Only if it completely explodes will they get involved. And businesses, being businesses, are getting these massive government contracts for millions or tens of millions to do certain things, be it with vulnerable members of society, like the young who are at risk, be it the elderly in the care homes or the immigration system. And they're just quite happy to take the money and then try as best they can to do it for as cheaply as they can. And let's just say some nefarious operators manage to get into the system, and well, that's where things really, really go wrong. You see, not only do you get nefarious, malicious actors and con men of all sorts, and people trying to make a quick buck out of the state, out of the taxpayer, taking on jobs that they're either ill-equipped or not equipped to do. It gets even worse than that, because these nefarious con artists then hire, let's just say, the wrong staff. They're trying to minimise, cut every corner they can possibly think of. So they hire in people who, let's just say, don't have the right credentials, don't have the right skills for the job, but they're cheap. And whilst in the private sector you might get away with that if you're running a chip shop, it's not quite so good if you are put in charge of some of the most vulnerable people in our society, be it the young, be it the old, be it the sick, the mentally unwell. It doesn't matter. All these vulnerable groups are now suddenly being hived off by the government on a wing and a prayer. And all too often, stories are coming to light that show the government is not watching the fox. We had a very high-profile case a couple of years ago here in Ireland of a Nigerian man, Emmanuel Adenaji, who somehow managed to get a job in elderly care homes, despite the fact that he had come to Ireland illegally. He managed to get a job with the most vulnerable members of our society, care of the elderly, and he went on to commit the most heinous crimes. He was convicted of rape, and it is widely suspected they didn't even uncover how many elderly patients this man abused in the years he was working there. He was hired with, as it seems, very little background checks, possibly no qualifications, just to get someone in to fill a gap in a private business's roster. Now, this was a very high-profile case at the time, and there have been many other cases, perhaps not quite as severe as this, and this is at the upper end of severity, the upper end of severity, but there have been many other cases, and there's one common denominator in these cases when I've looked into them. They're all foreign. They're hoovering in people from Africa, from Asia, from the Indian subcontinent to work with the most vulnerable people in Irish society, because these are private businesses trying to get the cheapest possible staff they can get to make, guess what, the most profit they can make. Because, like I said at the beginning, they are businesses. Now, with this Nigerian monster making all the headlines all across the media for all the wrong reasons, do you think the government would learn a lesson from that? Do you think the government would reappraise the whole situation? Think maybe we've gone down a wrong path here? Do you really think? No, this is Ireland. We never do stuff like that here, or at least our government never does. When they set themselves on a course, they just keep barreling on, no matter how bad it gets. And it can get real bad. Just look at what RTE uncovered recently in a care home for the elderly in Dublin.
How about we walk down here? Okay, we'll go for a walk. Okay, we'll go for a walk down here. Yeah.
Nobody, no woman.
That's okay. We'll go for a walk down here, and then we'll maybe.
I don't know.
We'll maybe go to the bathroom. Yeah.
Yeah, go on. Look at this.
But he was forced into his room.
Keep walking.
Mom will be allowed
Okay.
And his trousers and pad yanked down
Oh no.
before being pushed into the chair.
Stop that. Get out of my I do? You know, everybody can leave into this room and see the
Why? Yeah.
That's unacceptable. You can clearly see that he's being, roughly handled, inappropriately handled, that he's not understanding what's going on and being slightly frightened by it as well.
And this same man is being put to bed. Hours later at 4:30 in the morning, he wanted to use the toilet. But he again was denied, this time by a nurse.
What we are doing? Are you going to get your sheet? We don't have enough sheet, okay? We don't have enough sheet, okay?
You heard what she said there. We don't have enough sheets. Why do you think that is? Because it's a business. They need profits. They economise. It's not about care, it's about profit.
Fed by just one male carer without the help of any handling equipment.
No. Go on. Oh.
You're fine, you're fine.
No, you see, you're not to do this.
No, you're fine, you're fine.
It's awesome, son.
It's all right.
Distressed, the resident was moved under her arms into a lying position.
Come on.
Yeah, do. No, you're not.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
Huh?
We have to remember really that this is a person's home. There's clearly a suggestion to my mind that it was uncomfortable for her being handled by a male carer.
I think we can all agree these are absolutely shocking scenes and happening today, right at this moment, in care homes for the most vulnerable, the elderly, all over the country. The government has outsourced the care of the elderly to businesses, to private enterprises, because they don't care. The elderly in Ireland are of no more economic use, no more economic value to our government. Therefore, they don't matter. In fact, they're a burden as far as the government's concerned. Well, I say that's an abominable situation, and that is absolutely indicative of modern Ireland. Soulless, uncaring, unfeeling, just an economic zone. It wasn't always that way. We have lost so much here in Irish society. Some of us dearly, dearly wish we could bring it back.